There was a connection between Officer Chris Turner and his devoted canine partner, Max, that was stronger than any badge or weapon in the busy city where crime was always somewhere lurking in the shadows. More than a squad, they were a family, fighting the city's most evil forces with bravery, devotion, and an unwritten trust that would never be betrayed. Chris was renowned across the department for his cool head, keen intuition, and unshakable dedication to justice, making him more than just an ordinary cop. Max, though, was the one who really set him apart. Max, Chris's ideal companion, was a dog with unparalleled abilities who would never be afraid to take risks in order to defend people who couldn't be protected themselves. A well-oiled machine, Chris and Max were aware of each other's advantages and disadvantages. Chris was confident that Max would always be prepared for any assignment they were on, whether it included locating dangerous criminals or searching for drugs concealed in abandoned buildings. But Max's heart was what made him so valued, not simply his physical prowess and power. Max had a warrior's heart, and his devotion to Chris was clear in everything he did. Together, they had completed innumerable missions. Max always led the charge, whether it was in the tense standoffs in alleyways or the fast-paced chases through the city's streets. He was the greatest in the field because of his acute sense of smell, acute hearing, and unwavering focus. Made him the industry leader. But what really set him apart was his loyalty, his intense, unshakable commitment to Chris. Max had the best senses in the world. A single sniff of the air would allow him to follow a suspect for kilometers. Nothing could stop him from pursuing them through woodlands, across rivers, or into shadowy, deserted warehouses. And he didn't hesitate when he located his target. When his training began to take effect, he would attack the suspect with the dexterity of an experienced fighter. It was about saving lives, not just about catching criminals. From innocent bystanders who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time to those who were held captive, Max had saved countless lives. Chris was also aware that Max's responsibilities extended beyond being his partner. He was the one thing Chris could always count on in this world, as well as his best friend and protector. However, like with many tales, the unimaginable occurred one day. On a chilly fall evening, Chris and Max got a call that would permanently alter their course in life. A local bank is being robbed and the suspects are highly armed. Chris understood that this mission would be different from the others, and time was of the essence. There was anarchy when they got there. The scenario was becoming increasingly unstable as armed robbers held hostages inside the bank. Chris was aware that Max held the secret to bringing this risky circumstance to an end, but they would have to exercise caution. Armed to the teeth and prepared to go to any lengths to get away, these thieves weren't your typical crooks. Max was intent, his limbs tensed, poised for action, his gaze fixed on the bank's door. It was time, and Chris nodded quietly to him. Chris guided Max inside the building with the dexterity of an experienced policeman, each step deliberate and purposeful. Everything changed in the blink of an eye. A gunshot flew through the air and hit Max in the side as he pushed forward. As Chris stared helplessly as his best buddy passed out, time seemed to stop, and Max let out a piercing yelp, escaping Max's throat before he crumpled to the ground. Chris's heart broke at that same second. The tough, bold dog Max had known for years had changed. His eyes had gone dull, and his body was lifeless in Chris's arms. "Max, stay with me." Chris's voice cracked with passion as he pleaded, "Please, stay with me." However, it was too late. Max had sacrificed everything, including his love, allegiance, and life. As he caressed Max's fur, Chris, who was having trouble breathing, thought of all the times they had worked together. Together, they had experienced a great deal. Max had supported him at every hardship and obstacle. And he was gone now. Chris found it incomprehensible that something so horrible could occur. Max had been his friend, his family, and his partner. Chris had lost interest in the criminals. Other than Max, nothing mattered. He felt as though he was being choked by the weight of his partner's passing. He didn't know how he was going to continue without him, and the loss was intolerable. The city was in grief in the days that followed. In addition to losing a partner, Officer Chris Turner also lost a part of himself. Every time Chris passed by the precinct, he felt the loss of his faithful friend by his side. Max's passing left an unfillable vacuum. The city honored Max at a memorial service in recognition of his bravery. He received a Medal of Valor from the department, and the precinct's Hall of Heroes now has a plaque. For Chris, however, the accolades were meaningless. The relationship and connection they had formed could never be replaced by any prize. The silence at home was overwhelming. Chris sat by himself, gazing at Max's picture. Without Max, the house felt more empty. He missed Max nudging the dog with his nose when he sought attention, as well as the sound of his paws on the floor. He missed every aspect of him. Chris discovered methods to pay tribute to Max as the days stretched into weeks. In Max's honor, he established a charity to aid K-9 police and their families. Chris told kids about Max's bravery and dedication when he spoke at schools. He even started a unique endeavor to make a statue of Max in honor of the dog who sacrificed all for the city. Through the work Chris did, the lives he impacted, and the people who learned about the hero dog who had given so selflessly, Max's memory endured. Chris felt Max's ghost at his side whenever he talked about him, encouraging him to keep going no matter how tough life got. Even though Max was no longer with us, his legacy continued. Chris was aware that Max would always be a part of him, no matter where life led him. Additionally, Chris would continue to be guided and protected by Max's spirit as long as he lived. Chris, who had walked by Max for years, felt as if a piece of him had passed away with his comrade. Max's name appeared to be spoken in every part of the precinct. Though none of them fully comprehended the link between them, Chris's teammates, who had always viewed the dynamic combination as invincible, shared his anguish. Max, a highly skilled K-9 cop, had been little more than a dog to them. Max, however, was more to Chris. Max had been his inspiration when the world became too much to handle, his strength when he felt weak, and the reason he got out of bed every morning. Chris couldn't get the memories of their missions together out of his head. Running ahead, he recalled the innumerable times Max had protected him. The pain was constant. Every day felt like a shadow of the day before, and even though the city moved on, Chris remained paralyzed in his grief. He had considered giving up numerous times, leaving the force, leaving everything behind, but he couldn't. Max had been the unwavering presence in Chris's life, the one constant in a world that frequently felt uncertain. It was impossible for Chris to walk through the precinct without hearing the echo of Max's paws on the cold floor or the soft sound of his breath as he lay next to Chris on long nights when the stress of work made sleep impossible. That is not what Max would have desired. Max always tried his hardest. He had stood up for Chris, for justice, and for the defenseless. Even in the face of death, he had never given up. Chris was unable to do the same. Chris started to notice something odd in the months after Max's passing. His loss seems to be felt by many he assisted. Victims of crime, especially children, would look at him with kind eyes as though they knew what he had been through. Sometimes he would visit the local animal shelter, standing in front of the cages, staring at the dogs there, feeling the weight of the decision he was facing. It was too soon, wasn't it? He couldn't replace Max. No dog could ever replace Max, but Chris didn't know if he was ready to deal with another dog and another partner so soon after Max, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that maybe this was Max's way of guiding him forward. Maybe it was time to take another step, one that honored Max's legacy. Chris didn't make a snap decision. Instead, he spent weeks thinking, reliving memories, and honoring Max. He couldn't ignore the emptiness he felt, the longing for the company, the unwavering loyalty, and the warmth of a dog by his side. Then, one day when Chris wasn't expecting it, he got a call, as much as he could. In order to cope with the stress of losing his partner, he also began going to counseling sessions for himself. He addressed his fellow officers, who were always supportive and there for him. He took comfort in the knowledge that he was never really alone, despite the suffering. Chris then went to a nearby shelter one calm afternoon. With a sorrowful heart, he strolled along the dog lines. He had no idea what he was searching for, but something shifted inside him when he saw a certain dog, a rambunctious golden retriever mix. Perched in a corner, the dog gazed up at Chris with perceptive eyes. Chris was unable to connect with the light in those eyes. Disregard. The dog got up and wagging its tail in a strangely familiar manner as he approached its cage. Chris opened the cage without thinking, and the dog trotted out right away, sitting next to him as if they had known each other for years. For the first time in months, Chris's heart warmed as he laughed quietly. With emotion in his voice, he asked, "You're a fighter, aren't you?" As though to signal, "I'm ready." The dog licked his palm. Chris realized then that this was not Max's replacement. He could not be replaced. Chris needed this dog, though, because he had faced adversity and persevered through it. A new companion. A fresh start. Additionally, while the journey would never be the same as with Max, Chris was ready to honor Max's memory and take the next step forward. Months later, as Chris and his new partner worked side by side, it was clear that while they would never forget Max, they were beginning to heal. Max's memory was embedded in every mission they took, every criminal they caught, and every person they helped. The love and loyalty that Max had shown Chris were now part of his new partner's spirit, and every time Chris looked down at his new partner, he knew that Max would always be with him, in the corners of his heart, in every step forward. Max had taught him the value of loyalty, of love, and of never giving up, and those teachings would endure eternally in Chris's life as well as in the police force.